Kidnappings of school children in northern Nigeria. It comes amid rising tensions between Lagos and Washington, with Donald Trump threatening military intervention. And the Indian Cricket Board postpones the Bangladeshi women's tour. The officials have reportedly written to the Bangladesh Cricket Board. The bilateral series was scheduled for next month. The BCCI has reportedly cited ongoing tensions in Bangladesh as the reason for this decision. We begin tonight with the wipeout on Wall Street. More than $1.5 trillion have been erased in a matter of days. The US stock market is bleeding. This is not a glitch. This is a correction, and it is spilling over. Crypto has taken a punch. Crypto investors are suffering huge losses. We are talking about losses to the tune of $1 trillion. Tonight, we'll put together the numbers and try to make sense of this slide. And we'll start with the US stocks. The sell-off is accelerating. Wall Street opened in the red again today. Leading the fall are tech stocks. Names like Microsoft, Nvidia, AMD, Palantir, Oracle and Meta, which is the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, all these stocks are going south. Last week, these companies lost some $820 billion. These companies alone, $820 billion. This was the fall in their market value, and the loss is bigger than the GDP of many countries, so you can imagine the scale. And now crypto is on the same path. The shiniest name in the space is still Bitcoin, and Bitcoin has dropped by nearly 28%. It is now trading at its lowest level since April. Also, look at the broader crypto market. It has lost more than $1 trillion in just 6 weeks. That's a lot of money, and a massive blow to digital assets and their investors. What's worse, this is not an isolated dip. It is a broad retreat. Investors are junking anything they deem risky. And at this point, everything is under pressure, from conventional assets like stocks to digital currencies like crypto. But what has triggered this? What is driving the sell-off? The biggest factor is interest rates. No rate cuts are expected anytime soon, and that is making investors nervous. In the United States, the Federal Reserve regulates interest rates. They also call it the Fed. It is the American Central Bank. And a few weeks ago, the Fed was expected to cut rates. Investors had high hopes of a rate cut. They thought a rate cut would be announced before the end of this year. Reports said that the probability was as high as 70%, a 70% chance of a rate cut. But now it's down to 50%, a 50% probability of an interest rate cut by the US Federal Reserve. And why is that? Because of inflation. In the US, inflation is still high. It's back to 3%. Their inflation target is 2%. That's the target that the Federal Reserve sets. So 2% inflation would be ideal in America, according to them, but it continues to be higher. And that has reduced the chances of a rate cut. Again, it's simple economics. If you cut interest rates, loans become cheaper. More people borrow money. There's more money in circulation, and this pushes up inflation. So central banks tend to not cut rates when inflation is high. And the US Central Bank may do the same. They may defer the rate cuts. And this is what's making the markets jittery. That's the first reason. The second reason, and the more significant worry, is the AI bubble. There is no hiding from the fact there is a bubble in AI stocks. What does that mean? A bubble means the valuation is inflated. It doesn't match a company's earnings or its fundamentals. There is more hype than substance, and the risk is rising. And that's also the story of AI stocks. Their numbers do not add up. Even CEOs of top companies acknowledge this, like Sundar Pichai of Google. In a recent interview, he has issued a warning. Sundar Pichai said that if the AI bubble bursts, every company would be hit.
I think no company is going to be immune, including us. We can look back at the internet right now. There was clearly a lot of excess investment, but none of us would question whether the internet was profound. I expect AI to be the same. So I think it's both rational and there are elements of irrationality through a moment like this.
So even Google is sounding the alarm. Sundar Pichai says there is some irrationality in the AI rally. And this is not a small statement. It's a clear warning. When the CEO of a tech giant like Google says this, the rest of the market should take note. This is a warning sign that a bigger correction could be coming. So here's what investors must brace for. Choppy markets in the months ahead because the fundamentals are showing signs of weakness. Inflation is still high, spending is slowing, companies are pulling back on investment, and the job market is sending mixed signals. None of it inspires confidence. And until these numbers settle, the markets will keep swinging. They will be up one week, down the next week. Needless to say, this is not a normal phase. This is a stress test for stocks, for crypto, and for investors. The AI hype made things look easy, but now reality is catching up. This is a reset. Ask any accountant and they will tell you this. You must balance your books, whether it's income and expenditure, or assets and liabilities, or exports and imports. If you do not find that balance, it will hurt you in the long run. Tonight, we're focusing on India's books, specifically our trade. India's deficit widened in October. It set a new record. It stood at $41.6 billion last month. That's the highest it's ever been. And we'll tell you what's causing this problem. But first, some basics. What is a deficit? When you buy more from the world than you sell it, you have a deficit. In other words, when your imports exceed your exports. Say you export goods worth $80, but you import goods worth $100. The difference is $20, and that $20 is your deficit. India's deficit in October was $41.6 billion, meaning our imports exceeded our exports by that much, by $41.6 billion. Now let's put this number in context. In the month of September, India's deficit was $32 billion. Economists were expecting it to fall in October. From $32 billion, they expected it to fall to $28 billion. Instead, it rose to more than $41 billion. Obviously, the question is why? Why did the deficit rise, and that too to a record high? There are two main reasons for that. One is the festive demand for gold. Last month, India imported gold worth $14 billion. That's 200% up from October 2024, $14 billion worth of gold. This gold rush drove up India's overall imports. That's the first reason. Reason number two is US tariffs. President Donald Trump has imposed 50% tariffs on India. But India's competitors, other countries, face only 15 to 20% tariffs. So Indian goods with 50% tariffs are more expensive in the US. As a result, Indian trade has been hit. Our shipments to the US are down. They've fallen by 8.5% compared to last year. Now, if you combine these two reasons, the full picture emerges. Next question. Why is this a problem? Why is the deficit so bad? When Donald Trump complains about deficit, experts bash him. So if it's okay for the US, why is it a problem for India? It's a problem because of our economic position. India is a rising manufacturing powerhouse. Our goal is to become a factory and a pharmacy to the world. And that involves mass exports. Just look at China. They run a trade surplus of almost $90 billion, 90. That's the opposite of deficit, a surplus. China runs a trade surplus of $90 billion. So at this stage, India needs a surplus. If not a surplus, at least more balance. That's what India needs. And how do we achieve that? Well, a trade deal with the US will help because despite the slump, America remains our top market. Whether it's for phones or jewelry or apparel, the US is still India's biggest market, and that is why there is so much focus on the trade deal, on a possible agreement between India and the US. India's Commerce Minister is optimistic. He says there will be some good news soon. At the same time, he has made India's red lines very clear. He said any deal must be fair, balanced, and equitable.
We are both equally committed to working to expand trade and commerce between the two countries. And when the deal becomes fair, equitable, balanced, you will hear good news.
So where are the talks at? India has tried to be mindful of Donald Trump's concerns. For example, look at energy. Indian state firms are buying cooking gas from the US now, and that too for the first time ever. So New Delhi is making an effort to accommodate Trump. But the other side, not so much. Consider the issue of Indian students in the US. We're talking about a large community. There are some 300,000 Indian students in the United States, 3 lakh. Despite visa issues, enrollment is up. It is 10% higher than last year. Together, these students contribute $14 billion to the US economy. Imagine that, $14 billion every year just from Indian students. Yet no one talks about that. No one includes this contribution in the trade equation. All the focus is on the goods trade. And frankly, that's unfair. Indian student expenditure adds to the US economy through living costs, through research, through work. How can you ignore that from the trade equation? The fact is, trade in 2025 is not just containers on a ship. It is capital, it is people, it is technology as well. And any trade deal must account for that new reality.
I will say that we'll be selling F-35s.
$3 billion.
It's no secret that Donald Trump loves Saudi Arabia. Back in 2017, his very first trip as president was to Riyadh. It featured golden swords and orb photos. And in his second term, he did it again. Trump's first foreign stop this year was not to London or Ottawa. It was Riyadh. Straight to Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia and the de facto ruler of the kingdom. In fact, by now, the Trump-MBS bromance is global legend. Trump cannot stop praising MBS and MBS cannot stop hosting Trump. And now the Saudi Crown Prince is coming to Washington. It's about an hour from now. In about an hour from now, he will be at the White House to meet President Donald Trump. And this is a very significant visit. This is MBS's first trip to Washington since 2018. You may remember what happened that year, in 2018. Jamal Khashoggi was killed. He was a Saudi dissident. He was killed in the Saudi embassy in Turkey, reportedly on the orders of the Saudi Crown Prince. And when the case came to light, every Western nation isolated Saudi Arabia, but not Donald Trump.
We are going to leave nothing uncovered. With that being said, the king firmly denied any knowledge of it. He didn't really know. Maybe, I don't want to get into his mind, but it sounded to me like maybe these could have been rogue killers. Who knows?
So the world treated MBS as a global pariah, but Donald Trump did not. He clearly likes the Crown Prince too much, and now MBS is going to the Oval Office to see him. Of course, it's about more than their mutual admiration. This trip has a purpose. Saudi Arabia wants to be seen as a modern, dynamic, and indispensable power. And for that, it needs the United States of America, specifically America's technology, America's nuclear expertise, America's fighter jets, and yes, America's political blessing. MBS needs all of it. Look at the items on his agenda. The number one agenda item is the F-35 fighter jets. Saudi Arabia wants them, and Trump says he's ready to sell.
Yeah, no, I am planning on doing that. Yeah.
You're gonna
They want
sell
to buy.
F-35s?
They've been a great ally. They've got to like us very much. Look at the Iran situation, what we did in terms of obliterating, we obliterated their nuclear capability. Yeah, I will say that we will be doing that. We'll be selling F-35s.
Now, this is a very important development because the F-35 is not just any other fighter jet. It is America's best so far and the most advanced technologically. The US guards this jet like Willy Wonka guards chocolate. It is shared sparingly. Israel has a few F-35s, a few NATO allies have them, and Riyadh has long asked for them, but until now, Washington refused. Donald Trump is changing that. He says he will approve the sale. And the American defense establishment is wary because Saudi Arabia is also close to China. They've been getting cozy on a lot of things, including security, telecom, drone research, Saudi Arabia and China. So the Americans fear that their F-35 tech could end up in Chinese hands. And that is why they did not allow the sale so far. Plus, they have one more problem, and that is Israel. Israel has 45 of these jets, 45 F-35 jets. Saudi Arabia has requested, or is said to have requested, for 48 jets. And you know what that means? It could change the power dynamics of West Asia. Of course, Israel is not in favor of the sale. The IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, has formally opposed the plan. They do not want Trump to sell F-35s to Saudi Arabia. They believe it will erode Israel's air superiority. But Trump is having none of it because in this deal, he sees only two things: money and leverage. He believes giving F-35s would pull Saudi Arabia firmly into the American orbit. And there's another prize that he's chasing, the Abraham Accords. That is a normalization deal between Saudi Arabia and Israel. As of today, they do not recognize each other officially. They have no diplomatic ties, no official diplomatic ties, Saudi Arabia and Israel. Trump wants to change that, and if he does, he would change West Asia forever. It's a deal that he's long pursued. In his first term, he got 4 countries to normalize ties with Israel: the UAE, Bahrain, the Sudan, and Morocco. Saudi Arabia would be the big prize because it is the de facto leader of the Muslim world. It is the custodian of Mecca and Medina, the holiest sites in Islam. Trump wants it to recognize Israel. But for the Saudis, it will come at a huge political cost. And Crown Prince MBS knows that. He cannot abandon the Palestinian cause. He cannot abandon Gaza after what has happened. He will want a clear path to Palestinian statehood, and Israel may not agree to that. So normalization of ties may be tough. Trump may not get that deal in a hurry, but he might settle for something else today. Saudi money for the reconstruction of Gaza. Something symbolic, something that he can talk about, because often political storytelling matters more than political reality. And beyond that, this is about interests. Everyone pretends that foreign policy is about principles, but let's be honest, it's also about money. Trump has business projects in the Gulf, towers, golf tournaments, real estate proposals, and Saudi Arabia has massive sovereign wealth funds. Billions of dollars have already moved, billions more could follow. For MBS, this visit is about legitimacy. For Trump, it's about power. And for both men, it's about rewriting their own storylines. The countdown is on. Russian President Vladimir Putin is slated to visit India next month. Reports say it could happen in the first week of December. It's his first visit to India since the Ukraine war began. And it also comes amid growing pressure on India-Russia ties, mostly pressure from outside. So there's a lot of focus on this trip and a lot of efforts to make sure that it is successful. Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar is on one such mission. He is in Moscow for a 3-day visit. He landed on Monday. First, he met his Russian counterpart, that's Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Today, he took part in a meeting of the SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And later, he met Russian President Vladimir Putin. Now, the SCO is basically a regional bloc in Eurasia. Today, Russia hosted a meeting of the SCO states, and Jaishankar used the occasion to put the spotlight on terrorism. Listen to this.
We must never forget that the SCO was founded to combat the three evils of terrorism, separatism, and extremism. These threats have become even more serious in the years that have passed. It is imperative that the world display zero tolerance towards terrorism in all its forms and manifestations. There can be no justification, no looking away, and no whitewashing.
Security was a founding principle of the SCO. It's always been a crucial talking point at these summits. Plus, Pakistan was also in the room. Their foreign minister arrived in Moscow yesterday. He too attended the SCO meeting. So clearly, Jaishankar's message was targeted at Pakistan. He asked the SCO to not justify or whitewash terrorism. That's the multilateral aspect of Jaishankar's trip to Moscow. But the bilateral part is arguably more important. Jaishankar noted that yesterday was his 6th meeting with Lavrov this year, 6th meeting in 11 months. And look at the context. You have a US president who's asking India to abandon Russia. He has imposed tariffs to separate the two sides. And yet the ties remain strong. It is proof of the depth and longevity of this relationship, India and Russia. And that's something that Jaishankar also pointed out.
A number of bilateral agreements, initiatives, and projects are under discussion in various fields. We look forward to their finalization in the coming days. India-Russia ties have long been a factor of stability in international relations. Its growth and evolution is not only in our mutual interest, but also in that of the world.
All of this is leading up to Putin's visit, and Jaishankar was in Moscow as Jaishankar was in Moscow meeting Lavrov. Putin's top advisor was in Delhi meeting India's NSA. That's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval. The goal is to finalize agreements on trade and defense. Once the draft is done, the deal can be signed during Putin's visit. That's what both sides are hoping for. And let's look at one of the lined up deals. It involves a sale of 5th generation fighter jets. These are the most advanced jets in the world, the 5th generation fighters. Only 3 countries have made them. The US has the F-35, China has the J-20 and J-35, and Russia has the Su-57. Now, some reports say that Pakistan will buy 5th generation jets from China, meaning Islamabad could have a qualitative edge over India. And this has triggered a big debate in India. Experts are divided over our options. Should India wait for its own 5th gen plane, or should it buy one off the shelf? That is the debate. The second option, buying off the shelf, could benefit Russia. They have unveiled an upgraded Su-57 at the Dubai Air Show. They're also willing to sweeten the deal. Here's what Russian officials are offering: unrestricted tech transfer for those planes.
The Russian side, represented by Rosoboronexport and USC, is offering to India supply of Su-57 fighter produced in Russia, with subsequent organization of production of the aircraft in India and technology transfer. Hence, we are offering technological learning of field generation technologies, including engines, optics, AESA radar, AI elements, low signature technologies, and modern air weapons.
Let me translate what that meant. When you buy off the shelf, you get only the product. You don't get access to the technology, but Russia is offering that. First, they will sell the Su-57 to India. After that, they will transfer the technology as well, meaning India could build these planes at home. Like I said, it's a sweet deal. Russia is offering the planes, the tech, and the long-term support. They say Indian missiles could be fitted on the Su-57. The question is, will New Delhi go for it? Well, if we do, we'll know soon, because the hope is to strike a deal while Putin is visiting. And with so much on the agenda, it promises to be a high-stakes mission.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
Madhvi Hidma, one of the most feared Maoist commanders in Bastar, has been killed in an encounter. The confirmation comes from high-level security sources in the Bastar range, where Inspector General of Police Sundaraj Patalingam acknowledged the breakthrough. Hidma, who led the PLGA's Battalion No. 1, was a central figure in Maoist leadership. He had long evaded security operations. His neutralization is now a major strategic win by security forces. According to top intel sources, the top Maoist commander killing marks a major security breakthrough. He was behind brutal attacks in Bastar, Sukma, Dantewada and Malkangiri. His death disrupts Maoist logistics, recruitment and multi-district operations. Recent operations have cut Maoist influence by nearly 40%, pushing them into deep forest pockets already.
Sir, you've been heading the CRPF in the past. This news that is coming in of Hidma getting killed, what does this really mean as far as Naxalism is concerned, especially in Chhattisgarh?
Yeah, I would say that this is the most profound achievement since the war against the Naxals have started. As you know, Hidma was the epitome of all cruelty and barbaric acts in Bastar district, especially in Sukma area. And a lot of, I think, innocent people and security forces had been killed because of his strategic moves. So this, I would say, would be a decisive turnaround in this fight. And after his elimination, it would mean that the movement is almost gone. That is my perception.
So as far as his brutality goes, when 76 CRPF men were butchered, when the Darba Ghati massacre where the entire Congress leadership was eliminated, his footprint was visible on each one of these barbaric acts.
Yeah, there were a lot of incidents. In fact, the 76, that incident which happened in Chintalnar, then the incident at Chintagufa. I think that area was almost under his control for a long time. Of late, of course, he was on the run, and the security forces had really performed admirably well. And with this achievement, I'm sure that the Honorable Home Minister's commitment that it would end by March seems reality, and the movement should now be over.
My colleague Arunima is also joining us with more on this. India's most wanted Maoist commander, Arunima, neutralized. What does this mean as far as India's ongoing operation against Maoism is concerned? This target of March that the former DG also was talking about, where does this put India's operation currently?
See, for all practical purposes, Hidma being brought to justice means curtains for CPI Maoist in Chhattisgarh at least. Their footprint has already shrunk everywhere else. In Gadchiroli, which was the other Maoist affected area, the massive surrender that was orchestrated by Venugopal Rao surrender, alias Sonu, alias Abhay. In Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, yes, their top leadership is still from that state, but you can't really see any cadre there carrying out violence. So the only area where Naxal violence was dominating was in Chhattisgarh, and Hidma had a huge role to play in it. Him being brought to justice would mean that matter of time before security forces ensure that Chhattisgarh becomes violence free. In fact, some DG Prakash Mishra, who was the former Director General of CRPF, he is of the view that 2026 March target could actually be rewound and it could well be achieved by December of 2025. Similar words I heard from other DGs of CRPF as well, who felt that Hidma's death meant that in the next 1 month or so itself, Chhattisgarh could become Naxal free. And why are they saying this? Because Hidma is somebody who knows Sukma. He's a son of the soil. He rose from the rank there. He had 130 to 150 fiercely loyal tribal fighters constantly guarding him. With him now gone, I think they will be convinced to surrender and lay down weapons as well. So PLGA Battalion 1 and the Dandakaranya Special Zonal Committee, the two forces or the two wings of Maoists that Hidma headed, they are now all set to be dismantled as per the security grid. That is the significance of Hidma being brought to justice.
Yes, and this man, Hidma, was of course known for planning some of the most brutal ambushes against the security of agencies and officers on ground. My colleague Ankush Sharma is also joining us. Ankur, there have been this attempt to say to the Indian government that there should be some pause in this operation, there should be some amnesty, ceasefire of sorts. But the Indian government has been very clear that unless you lay down arms.
Our next story is from Europe, where the Ukrainian president is on a tour. Volodymyr Zelensky is visiting 3 countries, Greece, France and Spain, and he has one mission: to shore up military and political support for Ukraine. In France, Zelensky has had some success. Paris has agreed to supply Kiev with 100 Rafale jets. But a corruption scandal in Ukraine has cast a shadow over this deal. We've told you about it on the show. The scandal involves members of President Zelensky's inner circle. Reports say they took kickbacks worth $100 million. It led to the sacking of 2 ministers, and it has prompted leaders in Europe to ask uncomfortable questions. Our next report has more.
Zelensky is back in Europe. He's signing deals, securing aid, and landing fighter jets for Ukraine. In Paris, Zelensky has signed a big-ticket defense deal. French President Emmanuel Macron was there. When both sides announced Kiev will buy the Rafale fighter jets.
The first thing is that Ukraine will be able to receive 100 Rafale F-4 aircraft, very powerful French radars, 8 air defense systems, SAMPT, 6 launchers each.
But behind the handshakes, there's a shadow. A corruption scandal back home, one that's rattling Zelensky's inner circle and raising new questions about Ukraine's government. It centers on Ukraine's state nuclear agency. Investigators have uncovered a $100 million embezzlement scheme, secret deals, fake names, luxury villas, and even a golden toilet bowl, all built with public money. Some of the accused are close to Zelensky. His former business partner, Timur Mindich, fled the country hours before a raid. 2 ministers from Zelensky's cabinet have resigned. Others are under investigation. And the former deputy prime minister is named in court records. The case is serious. The president is trying to contain the fallout. He's called for swift punishment. His aides say he was floored by the scale of the theft. But critics say it's not enough, because this isn't just about embezzlement. It's about what the government did when the probe began. Reports say Ukraine's leadership tried to weaken the anti-corruption agency when it first began investigating 15 months ago. That's before any names had come out. The government tried to strip the agency's powers. Public backlash stopped it. Why does this matter? Because Ukraine receives billions in international aid every year. That includes money from the European Union, the United States, and other partners. And that aid comes with expectations of transparency and accountability. Zelensky is now traveling across Europe. He just concluded talks in Greece. He's heading to Spain next. And the message is clear. He wants Europe to stay invested, financially, militarily, and politically. But some European leaders are feeling uneasy. Reports say Zelensky's image has taken a hit. His tight control over power is under scrutiny, and the scandal has opened old wounds about corruption in Ukraine. Zelensky's top aide, Andriy Yermak, hasn't been accused. But insiders say he centralized too much, that he gave the wrong people too much access. Meanwhile, the war continues. Russian strikes are increasing. Ukraine's defense lines are holding, but under strain. And while the Rafale deal with France is a show of support, Zelensky's bigger battle may now be political. This was meant to be a diplomatic breakthrough. But the headlines tell another story. Zelensky is trying to win over Europe, but the scandal back home won't stay silent. Not while ministers are resigning, not while billions in aid hang in the balance. As they say, trust, when broken, might be the hardest thing to rebuild.
When we talk about India's security challenges, what is it that comes to your mind? Maybe it's Pakistan-sponsored terrorism or China's land grabs. These are events unfolding far away from us along unforgiving frontiers. They grab headlines and mind space. But what about the challenge inside our country? A fight that India has been fighting for decades and is now close to winning. I'm talking about the Maoist or Naxalite insurgency. Today, Indian forces struck a heavy blow to them. They neutralized one of the top Naxal commanders. His name was Madhvi Hidma. Hidma was among the most feared Maoist commanders. He joined the insurgency as a child recruit. Over time, he grew into leadership roles. Today, he has been killed. And this is being called the biggest setback to Maoists in 20 years. His story tells you why. Madhvi Hidma was a tribal recruit from Bastar. Bastar is a district in the state of Chhattisgarh in central India. Hidma joined the Maoists in the year 1991. Within the insurgency, he had a mythical image because Bastar is the center of Maoism. Most of their fighters are tribals, but their leaders are mostly Telugu speakers, basically outsiders who tell them what to do. So for the rank and file, Hidma from Bastar was one of their own. As a commander, he built a ruthless legacy. He engineered more than 20 attacks on civilians and security forces. Put together, he killed more than 100 people. Security forces have tried to eliminate him in the past, but each time Hidma escaped. This time, his luck ran out. Security officials got intelligence inputs about Maoist movement. They zeroed in on the Chhattisgarh-Andhra border. What followed was an encounter. Hidma, his wife and his bodyguards were killed. But the action did not stop there. Later in the day, another operation was launched. This one was led by Octopus, the Organization for Counter-Terrorist Operation. They arrested 31 Maoists from the state of Andhra Pradesh. So put together, it was a good day in the fight against Maoism. The question is, are we close to eliminating this threat? Well, the government of India has set a deadline, March 2026. By March next year, they want to eradicate Maoism in India. Frankly, it could happen before that, because look at the numbers. In 2025, security forces have neutralized 270 Maoists. They have arrested 680. And they've also arranged the surrender of more than 1,200. That's a big blow in just 11 months. Among those neutralized are also top leaders. In the month of May, Maoist party chief Basavaraj was killed, and now battlefield commander Hidma has also been killed. That's political and military leadership wiped out. And without those, no organization can succeed. If you look at the big picture, the progress is quite clear. In the year 2013, India had 182 Maoist-affected districts. By 2018, that number came down to 90. By 2024, it was down to 38, and now 2025, that number stands at 18 districts. Look at the progress, from 183 affected districts to just 18. The question is, what happens next? The first step is to completely stamp out the insurgency. After that comes progress. The Maoist hit areas are rich in natural resources. Just look at Chhattisgarh, one of the most mineral-rich states in India. It is home to 28 different minerals like diamond, coal, limestone, dolomite, bauxite. And most of these deposits are not accessible. Do you know why? Because they lie in Maoist-affected areas. And don't get us wrong, we are not saying that go in and plunder the forest. We are saying harness these resources, use nature's bounty to deliver progress for the locals. If you can do that, you can root out this problem. Because Maoists prey on the poor. They weaponize legitimate concerns to fight an illegitimate battle. Yes, you can defang them on the battlefield, but ultimately there must be progress. For decades, Red terror has haunted the people of Central and East India. It is time to finish this off once and for all. Our next story is about Nestle. It is the world's largest food company. It makes some of the most well-known products in the world. But tonight it is facing serious questions. And that is because of a new investigation. A report says Nestle sold baby cereals with added sugar. These products were sold in parts of Africa. They were meant for babies as young as 6 months. The lab tests found added sugar in most tested packets. But here's the thing. The same product in Europe had no added sugar. So 2 different standards for 2 different worlds. Nestle says the report is misleading and scientifically inaccurate. But the investigation has now triggered a global debate. Are food companies following one rule for some regions and another for others? Here's a report.
Early solid foods for babies are supposed to be the safest. They are generally considered free from additives. But a recent investigation has raised an alarm. Some packaged baby cereals in Africa contain added sugar. Sugar that many parents may not be aware of. The findings were released by Public Eye. It is a Swiss investigative group, and their investigation was centered on the world's largest food company, Nestlé. Public Eye's team worked with civil society partners in reportedly over 20 African countries. Together, they collected nearly 100 samples of Cerelac. Cerelac is Nestlé's flagship cereal for babies aged 6 months and above. All the samples went to a laboratory for testing. The results were consistent. More than 90% of the packets contained added sugar. The average serving held around 6 grams. That is roughly 1½ teaspoons. Some packets even contained 7½ grams. Investigators then compared these results with Cerelac, sold in richer markets. Many European versions had no added sugar. Public Eye pointed to this contrast. They said this amounted to a double standard, and that comparison triggered a bigger debate. Because global health guidance is clear. The World Health Organization recommends no added sugars in foods for children under 3. Experts say early sugar exposure can shape taste preferences. They also link it to tooth decay and higher risks of obesity later in life. Nestlé, however, rejected the allegations. The company said the report was misleading. It said its products follow national regulations in every country, and that its recipes meet international standards. Nestlé also said some of the sugar detected in tests comes from natural ingredients, including grains, milk, and fruit, and it announced a global shift to no added sugar Cerelac by the end of this year. But this is not the first time Nestlé has faced scrutiny over its nutrition practices. In April 2024, Public Eye reported that Nestlé added sugar to its baby foods sold in low-income countries, including India. But they were not included in the European markets. In 2015, Nestlé's favorite Maggi noodles were banned in India. This was after it was found that the product contained more than permissible levels of lead and monosodium glutamate, or MSG. And over the years, rights groups have also reported cases of child labor on cocoa farms allegedly linked to Nestlé. Those reports led to lawsuits and promises to strengthen supply chain checks. Together, these episodes form a long history of scrutiny, and they shape how the new findings are received today. The latest results land at a critical moment for many African countries. Obesity and diabetes are rising. Undernutrition remains widespread. Health experts call this the double burden of malnutrition. And this raises some important questions. What should be the standard for food made for infants? And should that standard ever differ from one region to another?
In East Asia, tensions are on the rise. It's China versus Japan. It started as a diplomatic row. The trigger was a remark in Tokyo, but now it's snowballing into a full-fledged showdown. It is now spilled into daily life in both countries, with governments hardening their positions, travelers changing their plans, airlines counting their losses, cinemas adjusting their schedules, and diplomats making urgent trips. All of this is happening over one question. And what is that question? What happens if there is a crisis in the Taiwan Strait? That was a question. Japan answered it. China did not like it, hence the meltdown. Earlier this month, Japan's parliament discussed this hypothetical crisis. What if China attacked Taiwan? What would Japan do if China attacked Taiwan? Their new Prime Minister, Senator Takaichi, gave a response. Listen in.
If China were to deploy battleships and involve the use of force, I believe this could be deemed a situation threatening Japan's survival.
That phrase, a threat to Japan's survival, is not routine. It is a legal term in Japan's security framework. It opens the door to Japan using force in extreme cases. So the remark carried a lot of weight, and it marked a clear shift. A shift in how openly Japanese leaders now speak about Taiwan. Beijing's response came quickly. It summoned the Japanese envoy. It demanded that Prime Minister Takaichi retract her remarks. They said her words violated the One China principle. Beijing said Tokyo was damaging bilateral ties. Today, senior officials from both sides met in Beijing. China says it has lodged, and I'm quoting, it has lodged a strong protest.
Takaichi's fallacy seriously violated the basic norms of international law and international relations and seriously undermined the post-war international order. It seriously violates the One China principle and the spirit of the four political documents between China and Japan and fundamentally damages the political foundation of Sino-Japanese relations.
Tokyo has pushed back against this, but it's also being careful. It says Takaichi's comments do not change Japan's official policy. And what is that policy? The One China policy. There's One China and its government is in Beijing. That is Japan's policy. It's been in place since 1972. But here's the catch. Japan also maintains working ties with Taiwan. Taiwan is self-governed with its own constitution, its own military and its own currency. Its political status is complex. Most countries in the world do not recognize Taiwan as a separate nation. Japan, too, does not officially support Taiwan's independence, but it also opposes any change in the status quo by force. This balancing act has guided Japan for decades. So when Tokyo says nothing has changed, it means this balance still holds. But China is upset, and it wants to make its displeasure felt. So it issued a travel warning against Japan. It told Chinese citizens to avoid traveling to Japan. Why? Because the remarks from Tokyo had created quote-unquote safety risks. That's what Beijing said. There are safety risks, so don't go to Japan. And the impact was immediate. Chinese airlines began offering full refunds. Chinese passengers cancelled their trips in large numbers. Reports say nearly 500,000 tickets. 500,000 tickets have been cancelled in just a few days. On some days, cancellations outnumbered new bookings by 27 times. And sure enough, Japan felt the blow. Because Chinese tourists are among their biggest spenders. Tourism and retail stocks in Tokyo fell sharply yesterday. In response, Japan issued its own safety advisory. It asked Japanese nationals to avoid large gatherings. It also told them to be on alert. And it raised a formal protest in Beijing today. It told China that the travel warning was excessive. But China refuses to budge. It has also postponed the release of 2 Japanese movies. It says the public sentiment has shifted. So one remark on Taiwan, and you have disruptions in travel and entertainment. It has also spilled into security signals. Their militaries are making aggressive moves. It's mostly posturing at this point, but none of this bodes well for the region. China flips every time a country mentions Taiwan. All because Xi Jinping has made it his personal political mission. He wants to control Taiwan. He's not ruled out the use of force if needed. and he won't entertain questions, even hypothetical ones.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
Madhvi Hidma, one of the most feared Maoist commanders in Bastar, has been killed in an encounter. The confirmation comes from high-level security sources in the Bastar range, where Inspector General of Police Sundaraj Patalingam acknowledged the breakthrough. Hidma, who led the PLGA's Battalion No. 1, was a central figure in Maoist leadership. He had long evaded security operations. His neutralization is now a major strategic win by security forces. According to top intel sources, the top Maoist commander killing marks a major security breakthrough. He was behind brutal attacks in Bastar, Sukma, Dantewada and Malkangiri. His death disrupts Maoist logistics, recruitment and multi-district operations. Recent operations have cut Maoist influence by nearly 40%, pushing them into deep forest pockets already.
Sir, you've been heading the CRPF in the past. This news that is coming in of Hidma getting killed, what does this really mean as far as Naxalism is concerned, especially in Chhattisgarh?
Yeah, I would say that this is the most profound achievement since the war against the Naxals have started. As you know, Hidma was the epitome of all cruelty and barbaric acts in Bastar district, especially in Sukma area. And a lot of, I think, innocent people and security forces had been killed because of his strategic moves. So this, I would say, would be a decisive turnaround in this fight. And after his elimination, it would mean that the movement is almost gone. That is my perception.
So as far as his brutality goes, when 76 CRPF men were butchered, when the Darba Ghati massacre where the entire Congress leadership was eliminated, his footprint was visible on each one of these barbaric acts.
Yeah, there were a lot of incidents. In fact, the 76, that incident which happened in Chintalnar, then the incident at Chintagufa. I think that area was almost under his control for a long time. Of late, of course, he was on the run, and the security forces had really performed admirably well. And with this achievement, I'm sure that the Honorable Home Minister's commitment that it would end by March seems reality, and the movement should now be over.
My colleague Arunima is also joining us with more on this. India's most wanted Maoist commander, Arunima, neutralized. What does this mean as far as India's ongoing operation against Maoism is concerned? This target of March that the former DG also was talking about, where does this put India's operation currently?
See, for all practical purposes, Hidma being brought to justice means curtains for CPI Maoist in Chhattisgarh at least. Their footprint has already shrunk everywhere else. In Gadchiroli, which was the other Maoist affected area, the massive surrender that was orchestrated by Venugopal Rao's surrender, alias Sonu, alias Abhay. In Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, yes, their top leadership is still from that state, but you can't really see any cadre there carrying out violence. So the only area where Naxal violence was dominating was in Chhattisgarh, and Hidma had a huge role to play in it. Him being brought to justice would mean that matter of time before security forces ensure that Chhattisgarh becomes violence free. In fact, some DG Prakash Mishra, who was the former Director General of CRPF, he is of the view that 2026 March target could actually be rewound and it could well be achieved by December of 2025. Similar words I heard from other DGs of CRPF as well, who felt that Hidma's death meant that in the next 1 month or so itself, Chhattisgarh could become Naxal free. And why are they saying this? Because Hidma is somebody who knows Sukma. He's a son of the soil. He rose from the rank there. He had 130 to 150 fiercely loyal tribal fighters constantly guarding him. With him now gone, I think they will be convinced to surrender and lay down weapons as well. So PLGA Battalion 1 and the Dandakarya Special Zonal Committee, the two forces or the two wings of Maoists that Hidma headed, they are now all set to be dismantled as per the security grid. That is the significance of